This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. I was thinking, right, because there's two videos I want to get done before Saturday's game. There's one video that's like, hey, what am I looking forward to seeing specifically in week one of the preseason? And I'm thinking I'm going to drop that probably Saturday morning. Feels the best place to drop that video. But in the meantime, I want to talk about what I want to see from this team during the entire preseason. Because now that we're transitioning to just training camp practices for almost a month to now the 3 weeks of training camp that are about preseason games and most importantly, going up against other teams, right? Like that's the big thing. You work for 3 weeks, you install what you can install, you get guys reps, you get guys up to date, and then you take that show on the road and then you play a team here, you practice against a team there, you play against another team, and you start to see what the 2026 Browns are going to be. Gets me excited. I hope you can tell that I am excited to talk about stuff like this because too much of the conversation for this offseason has been theoretical football, right? Now we can really get into the nitty gritty and talk about some of the things that we're going to see impacted. And one of the things that I'm the most excited for when to evaluate during this preseason is the run game, because that is the area of the offense I have the most hope for. That is the area of the offense I think the Browns have the most pinned on. And I think that's the area of the offense when you look at who they brought over from Baltimore and who's in charge of this offense now, paired with the personnel that they have, has the chance to make the biggest leap from 2025 to 2026. Let me explain why it is that I think that leap can happen this year and what we should look for in the preseason. So one reason why I think that the leap can happen is the personnel changes on the coaching side of the ball, right? I think a lot of the Browns' run game issues last year were valid criticisms of Kevin Stefanski and how he goes about things, right? Now, I'm not somebody who puts everything on Kevin. I think there's too much of that going on where if you just see a problem from last year, people go, Kevin's gone, so it's going to be fixed. That's not how I roll when it comes to the Browns. But I do think that the run game and how Kevin structured and sequenced his run game was a big issue for this team the last couple of years. Kevin, he likes to run in predictable patterns, and he likes to run with staple plays, which ends up meaning when you're not that good of a football team, that the run game gets really, really predictable because what Kevin is banking on for his passing game to build it is that predictability of the run game, right? He wants to create these patterns so that you as a defense recognize these patterns and then try to jump the patterns. And then once you make that jump, play action, big shot downfield, right? That's what the Kevin Stefanski offense is built off of. And when you don't have the personnel on offense to overpower teams, then you start to see the run game diminish. And what I mean by overpower teams is when you are just better than the team in front of you at running the football, it really doesn't matter if they can see it coming, right? We make a big deal, and coaches tend to make a big deal out of secrecy, right? We don't want teams to see our plays, but the reality is even if a team knows what's coming, if you are great at that side of the ball, it's very hard to stop, right? There are countless examples of this. We know what the Bengals, for example, want to do. They want to get the ball to Jamar Chase. They want to put it in Joe Burrow's hands so he can throw it downfield to Jamar Chase. Every team that plays the Cincinnati Bengals knows that that's what the Cincinnati Bengals wants to do. They have multiple ways that they want to get it to Jamar Chase, but that's the goal that the Bengals have. it's easy to predict that the ball is going to go to Jamar Chase. It's much harder to stop because Joe Burrow is very good and Jamar Chase is very good. Also, the Bengals have other threats that make you have to pay attention to them instead of just Jamar Chase. But it's always Jamar Chase leading them in targets. It's always Jamar Chase leading them in production. It's well known what they're going to do. It's another thing to stop it, right? When the Browns had Nick Chubb, teams knew what the Browns wanted to do. Wide zone, play action, run off of it, get Nick Chubb going downhill attack, right? The same thing's true with Derrick Henry. You know exactly how every team that will ever employ Derrick Henry runs Derrick Henry. That's not the issue. The issue is stopping it, right? And with Kevin, when they had Nick Chubb, when this offensive line was one of the best offensive lines in football from 2020 to 2022, it did not matter that the Browns' run game was predictable because they were dominant. They had the best running back in football, you could argue, and the best offensive line in football. So, yeah, it was predictable. It didn't matter. But once that offensive line started to decline, once Nick Chubb wasn't the best running back in football, all of a sudden these issues started to hurt him. So that's how the Browns run game got to where it is. Now let's talk about what's changing with it. Travis Schweitzer is the new offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. Todd Monken is the new head coach for the Cleveland Browns, taking over for Kevin Stefanski, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And here's the hope, right? The most impressive thing, and I think Todd did a number of impressive things in Baltimore, right? Like, let's keep in mind, he was the offensive coordinator of a 41 touchdown, 4 interception season for Lamar Jackson, where he threw for 4,000 yards and should have won the MVP, right? Like, that was the guy who architected that. So, like, not to say that Todd's not good at structuring up a pass game, but what Todd is excellent at is figuring out this run game. What Todd did the best, I think, while he was at Baltimore and even while he was at Georgia, is figure out these run games and strengthen that part of his offensive game plan ability. It was very impressive to see the Ravens move on from Greg Roman and get better at running the football, because that usually doesn't happen. Greg Roman is a limited play caller when it comes to passing the football, but when it comes to running the ball, he is considered the best. They got rid of him. They brought in Todd Monken. The assumption was the running was going to get worse. It got better with Todd Monken. It got better with Travis Schweitzer. I'm excited to see what those two can cook up with a completely new offensive line and Quincy Judkins. I hope that there's more variety in what the Browns are willing to run out of. We know that Todd Monken likes to run a lot of counter. We know that there's going to be a heavy flow of both gap and zone scheme runs for Todd Monken in this offense. But what's the sequencing going to look like, right? Todd tends to be against the grain when it comes to sequencing. When you look at the stats out there, right? Like, he's not likely to run the ball on first down in situations where most guys will run the ball on first down. He tends to sequence his offense just a little bit different than the rest of the league. I think that's going to be interesting to see. And that's something we finally get to have a look at in the preseason, is the sequencing. When do the Browns run? Are they always running on first down? Are they willing to run on third and long a little bit more? Are they willing to run on second down? Are they willing to run on different downs? When they run the ball, this is another thing we get to see in the preseason. What packages are they comfortable running out of, right? Is it always going to be 12P that they're running out of? That was the Kevin Stefanski problem. He only ran the ball out of 12 and 13P, right? So when you saw a third tight end come onto the field, if you're the other team, you're checking into a heavier personnel and you're saying they're running the ball. Again, the predictability of the run game is not really a bug in Kevin's offense. It's a feature, but when it's not dominant, then you run into problems, right? And that's what happened with Kevin in Cleveland. He couldn't adjust to that. Now, there's a different sheriff in town when it comes to the run game. So how's the sequencing going to change? How is where these runs come from, where they're willing to run from, who they're willing to run with, when they're willing to run certain types of plays. All of those things are going to be much more, we're going to get so much more insight on while watching the preseason, right? How much pre-snap motion do they like to use on offense is another one, right? Who are they asking to pull and kick on the offensive line? That's a sneaky thing that we have to pay attention to. Like, how much pulling and kicking are they asking Spencer Fano to do? Or is it a lot of pin downs, right? So for those of you who don't know, when I'm saying pull, kick, pin, that's just like the direction, the distance that the offensive lineman would take. So if I'm asking a center to kick out, so what we're saying is that the center would go from his gap to all the way out towards like C gap. So it's like a kick out, right? Are we asking the center to cover that distance? Kevin's offense, it was a lot of guard pulls, heavy guard pulls when it comes to the run game, right? Sometimes they would even kick Joel out the tackle. That's what the staples of Kevin's offense are. But hey, are they going to ask the center to pull and lead block sometimes? Are they going to ask the center to kick? Are they going to ask tackles to kick more? Like who's getting asked to do what along the offensive line? I think that's going to be interesting to see. Trenches are what we're going to get to learn about during the preseason, and I'm super excited to talk about that. There's more that I'm excited to see during the preseason, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 sports pick app. The app is really easy to use. For player picks, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. That's it. Rather just pick teams, PrizePicks has that now too. Just pick the winner, spread, or total in any game or fight. PrizePicks is available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. Plus, you can even follow me on the app at Quen_C. Tell my picks, one click, and follow your friends too. Best of all, play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups if you win. Just use the promo code HMA when you sign up. That's right. PrizePicks just switched up their offer, so there's no better time to join. Lock in and win with that first lineup. That's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win with your first $5 or up lineup. All right, so another thing I'm interested to see during the entirety of the preseason is like, how is this defense going to be different than what the Browns have done in the past? Now, obviously, until we get to the regular season, there are going to be some limitations on what we know about this defense. But there are some things that you just have to work on that are going to be a part of your defense. If that is, in fact, going to... Okay, so let's flip to the other side of the ball here, because as much intrigue as there is to the run game, the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, I think there's a ton of intrigue on this defense, because the big question I think for everybody is like, hey, how is this Browns defense really going to be different from what they tried to do last year? That's a big question mark that we haven't been able to examine much, that we don't really have a ton of information on, that the preseason is going to illuminate some of that. Obviously, you're not going to see all your disguise blitzes and everything about your offensive and defensive philosophy, because you're not giving that all away for free. Not saying that that's going to be the case, but I do think we'll be able to tell some things about this defense. How many safeties are they playing at a time on a regular basis? What are they asking those safeties to do? And more importantly, what downs are they asking those safeties to do those things, right? Are the Browns going to be a team that's really comfortable with the extra safety out there sitting in nickel on first down? Is that going to be who the Browns are? Are the Browns going to be a base-heavy team where they go out there with 3 linebackers? I don't think they're going to be base-heavy. It looks like they're prioritizing 2 linebacker positions and 3 safety positions. So it seems like they want to sit in nickel most of the time. But we won't really know until we see them align out there in the preseason. How wide are these defensive ends going to be sitting, right? We know with the old Jim Schwartz system that these guys sat on that 9 wide, right? The 9W. So guys were all the way out past the tight end at times in their alignment on the defensive line. Are we going to be as comfortable with our edges that far out now with a different defensive coordinator? Where do we put Jared Verse on the line of scrimmage? Maybe even play with where you line up Jared Verse. Now, obviously, during the season, we're going to see Jared Verse line up in multiple places, but I'm not talking about more of the gimmick stuff, right? Where we put Jared Verse in the A or the B gap or something like that. I'm speaking more on but I'm saying more of hey, where are they going to shade? Right? Are they going to shade at the 5? Are they going to be at a 4I sometimes? Are we going to sit at 6I? These are all alignments that align with the different shoulder of each offensive lineman, right? So basically, if you don't know what those terms are, it's like asking, will Jared Verse be between the guard and the tackle? Will he be between the guard and the tight end? I mean, not the tight end, the tackle and the tight end. Will he be outside the tight end, or where exactly are we going to have these gap fits? What does that mean for how these defensive tackles have to play? Because what the Browns have a lot of on their roster are traditional 3-techs. Now, they're called 3-techs instead of defensive tackles, not because they're not defensive tackles, but because the 3-tech is a reference to where that player aligns. It's on the 3. The 3 is the outside shoulder of the guard, inside shoulder of the tackle, right? So are they going to play a 1? Probably not. What do those alignments look like? How's that going to affect the run coverage? All of those things are questions that we have about this defense that are going to change with a new defensive coordinator that we don't really know yet. What are the run fits going to look like? Who are the basic run fit responsibilities going to be? And are those guys capable of holding up with just basic run fit responsibilities? A lot of questions that need to be answered on the defensive side of the ball that we're going to find out a lot about. Now, the most exciting thing I think we're going to learn in the preseason is about these wide receivers, because there's been no shortage of highlights from Isaiah Bond in training camp. There's been no shortage of highlights from Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion. Now we get to see them do this against other teams, right? The big question some people have going into these preseason games is, hey, yeah, these guys look impressive, but is that more of a statement on the lack of depth in our DB room? Or is that something that's going to replicate itself against other teams? Now we get the opportunity to see that with these wide receivers and really get excited. Casey Concepcion, we're probably going to see him do some special team stuff that he's going to do during the regular season. Remember, he was a big-time punt returner at Texas A&M. Well, what does that look like in the pros? How does that change the dynamic of this offense? I mean, the Browns in general haven't had an impact player on that side of special teams since Josh Cribbs. So how does that change the offense's dynamics and everything else, and what the defense's dominance can look like? That's going to be a lot of stuff that we learn. That's what I'm excited about to learn about this team during the course of the preseason. What are you excited to learn about this team during the course of the preseason? Let me know in the comment section. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.